Hello and welcome to the new vlog. I would like to talk about online dating. Now, I've come into the world of online dating after a failed marriage and also after it, a failed partnership where I was cheated on, unfortunately, and experienced very significant emotional abuse. So I was looking forward for a positive experience. I was looking forward to be healed. Now, that is not necessarily how it worked out. However, it did give me a lot of stories to tell. Now, firstly, I was shocked by how many dodgy scammers there are on these apps. Sometimes bots, so sometimes bots and fake accounts from overseas just blatantly trying to get money out of people that are chatting, so-called chatting with them. Sometimes it's more sophisticated than that. Sometimes it is genuine people out there, not genuine, but real people that are trying to make their way in with a mark and get the money out of them. Now, I was lucky in a sense of I kind of double guess everything, and as soon as any of the conversations went into that sort of territory, I would just block the account. However, I know a lot of people aren't as sophisticated in checking all this sort of stuff. So people end up losing thousands and thousands of dollars to these scammers, to these dodgy people and bots. And the reality is the victims are usually the most vulnerable people. They're people that are seeking love or romance or connection. And in the end, all they get is, on top of their heartbreak, a major financial loss. And it's really disgusting. Now, secondly, it was really surprising to see how many people treat dating like a supermarket. What I mean by that is they approach it like they want a menu, like they have a shopping list. I want a husband. I want a baby. I want a car, or, I want sex. I want to gallivant. I want to hook up with 10,000 people. Whereas in reality, if you think about it, romance shouldn't be about that, right? It shouldn't be about picking someone with a house or having a baby with someone straight away. It may lead to that territory, but first and foremost, it should be about, this is what I have to offer, right? How about if we meet someone that we have a connection with, then we see where things progress. Now, it may progress to all sorts of things. It may be friendship, for example, or some sort of companionship. Not necessarily straight away partnership, but vice versa, not just sex, right? Not just having a sex buddy. Unfortunately, it's become so materialistic and so transactional that you never see many people approach it from a perspective of, here I am, this is what I'm prepared to offer. This is what I have to contribute, right? It's never about contribution. It's always about I want, give me. And some people are really aggressive with that. I've met women who within the start of the conversation are already saying things like, oh, I'm looking for a family. I haven't even met you. I'm not going to have a family with you because I haven't met you yet, right? Certainly not in love with you. I don't even know who you are. And so quickly just jumping sort of, these levels that you haven't attained yet, you're trying to surpass all that and jump straight into having a family. And of course there is the flip side of that as well, which is, the conversation is just starting and they're already talking about, they wanting to hook up or they want to have sex or whatever, not getting to know each other. Some of them don't even ask your name, right? It's really, really shocking. Like the morals just keep on going down on these apps on a daily basis. It's pretty pathetic. There was a woman that I met there, and she, within maybe half an hour of meeting me, is saying things like, oh, so, I mean, mind you, at least with this one, we have actually met. So that's a positive start already. So we met, and I think we're having a good conversation. She goes, so can you tell me something interesting? And I was really taken aback because it almost sounded a bit offensive. Here I am talking about myself, and she's kind of basically indicating that it's really boring. And then she followed up with, like, do you go to sex parties or anything like that? Got really taken aback. Again, this is a person that I just met, that we spent probably in total half an hour talking with, and she's, already jumping into orgies, right? Turns out that she has been to sex parties, and then she's kind of tried to backpedal a little bit. She's like, well, look, I'm not that sort of sexually active. I'm still in double digits. And I had to clarify what does that mean? That means you had less than 100 sexual partners? She's like, yeah, I had less than 100, so I'm not doing too badly, and never caught anything. I kind of thought to myself, that's a pretty low bar to set, right? Not having an STI. I mean, obviously things happen sometimes, but if that's your kind of level, that everything is okay as long as you don't catch an STI, maybe you need to reassess the values in life, right? Secondly, I mean, many people would probably say that having 100 sexual partners is probably a little bit on the large side. Not judging or anything, but if you're, approaching that sort of a territory, were these people you were in love with? Were you having relationships with them? I mean, probably not, right? So they were just meaningless hookups, which didn't contribute anything positive to your life, but probably affected your ability to have emotional connections after that. Now, what's really interesting is that with this lady, she was actually looking for a partner. This was probably not a great way to start that pursuit, right? But she was looking for a partner. And within a very brief period of time, she already started kind of making plans for me, etc. This is how I should approach things, this is what my schedule should be looking like, etc., etc., etc. I had to really kind of pull back and say, look, we don't actually know each other that well, right? We're not actually in a relationship. So her response was, well, you just want to make everything about yourself. Which was really, really confusing because I wasn't making any plans for her. I wasn't trying to change her life. She was actually trying to adjust everything in mine, right? Without, again, being in an official relationship or partnership of any sort. And yet she had the audacity to kind of call me out on sort of me trying to make things about me, whereas the opposite was the case, right? She had all sorts of ideas, like she didn't want to travel too far because she was afraid of outer suburbia. She thought eastern suburbs were better than western suburbs, and she would say things like, oh, I'm afraid that I'm going to get stabbed if I go to western suburbs. Like, we don't live in New York or someplace. Like, come on. No offense to anyone from New York if you are watching, love New York, but seriously, this was just ridiculous. So eventually I had to really back off from that and say, look, you need to kind of focus on yourself, and clearly there's probably a lot of healing that you need to do on your own, right? Not here. And look, I understand that sometimes it's hard, especially when you're in your 30s like myself and you're dating after you've already been in relationships or marriages and stuff like that. But that's not an excuse, right? It doesn't mean that you can just try to make everything about yourself and then to gaslight someone else essentially and kind of say, oh, hey, you're not doing everything that I want. That means you're wrong. Instead of kind of do a bit of introspection, kind of going like, well, hey, he's putting in the effort. He is willing to travel across town to see me. Maybe I should do the same. But at least, she had a previous relationship, a marriage, so she was kind of approaching things from a perspective of experience. Now, whether her approach was good or not is a separate story, but at least she had something behind herself. Now, there is a whole different layer of women that I was unfortunate enough to meet, which is people that really haven't had those experiences yet. Now, they were, again, in their 30s, etc., but for whatever reason, either they spend their 20s partying or traveling. I mean, travel is a big one. I've met quite a few women who have traveled a lot in their 20s. Some of them actually worked in travel. Maybe there is a connection between the two, maybe not, I don't know. And what actually happened was that they've spent a lot of time gallivanting and partying, etc., overseas, but they haven't had any marriages or serious relationships or anything like that. And that really shows when you approach the 30s about, in terms of your outlook in life and when you are meeting someone. So I met with this girl, and she spent last decade in, going to Thailand and going here and there and everywhere. and had a lovely date, had a nice time, you know, went and grabbed a dinner, kissed, everything was going really swell, you know, decided to keep it going. First few days, you know, lovely messages, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden, you know, there's a message saying, oh, look, you're a great kisser and you're so good looking, but I just figured out it's not what I'm looking for. And I thought to myself, okay, so you're looking for someone who's a really bad kisser? You're looking for someone who's ugly? What are you looking for, right? And what it comes down to is that these women who have, and probably men too, is just, I don't date men, obviously. These women, they've traveled so much and they're used to these short flings that as soon as they feel real attraction or real sort of a connection, they back off, right? And so I don't know what happened in the background. Maybe she hooked up with someone else. Maybe, you know, she just got scared. But from being all, this is so amazing, to getting, you know, to her sending this weird message that didn't really explain anything. It's and this is not just a one-off, not just a once-off. There was another girl, again, traveled lots, worked in travel, in fact, and spent a lovely night together. Everything was going well. And then I start getting these sort of weird kind of messages from her, like, you know, everything that I would say, if I'd make a joke, she'd be like, oh, you know, that's a red flag, that's a red flag. And it was really sort of confusing for me because I wasn't being rude to her or whatever. I would joke with her, which you'd probably want in early stages of courtship, right? You want people to be sort of testing each other out a bit, not in a rude way, not in a disrespectful way, but a bit of joking, a bit of sort of seeing where, you know, where person's interests are and where their sense of humor is at. Obviously, in her case, sense of humor was not very strong. But yeah, so she started, again, sort of everything that I would say, she'd be like, oh, you know, seeking out these red flags, where there was really no red flags involved. What is a real red flag, though, is someone who is just sort of seeking an excuse to find that there is something wrong, right? Because, again, no connection, like no ongoing connection, is okay for them, because they're just so used to these short flings where if they themselves feel a real attraction, they then kind of try to back off, right? And that's really not okay, because, hey, relationships can be a bit scary and feelings can be a bit scary, but you can't just sort of go, you know, let me find out if there is something wrong, because then you will find something wrong, because there's something wrong with everyone, right? I'm not perfect. I'll be the first one to say I'm not perfect. But if you actually, instead of approaching it again from a me perspective, if you approach it from a perspective of, what can I contribute? What do I have to give? You're not going to be finding red flags, right? Because instead you're going to be dealing with your own red flags. You're going to be approaching, hey, I have this sort of stuff in my background that I need to fix. And this is also the positive sides of me that I can offer to someone else, right? Instead of seeing, you know, oh, there must be something wrong with them. They're too attractive and they're too much of a good kisser, so must be pretty bad. all sorts of examples, and again, all of them kind of follow this similar pattern of starts off really nicely, and then within sometimes weeks, but often days or even hours, you kind of see wheels falling off. I met with a woman, very brief meeting, you know, just met up for drinks, didn't necessarily, progress anyway, just had a lovely chat and left it after about half an hour. Within minutes, I'm getting messages from her saying, like, oh, I really wanted to kiss you and stuff like that, which I'm thinking, okay, that sounds like a good start, right? And then we didn't even have the second date. That was the only date we had, just one date. Within days, she's already messaged me about, you know, sort of setting up a schedule for my life, right? You know, this is how she wants things done. And, you know, she's telling me about her schedule, which is that she is in bed at 8:30 p.m. and then she prefers to watch TV for half an hour and then, you know, read book for half an hour, and then she needs to get at least 10 hours of sleep a night. Which, you know, it's great, you know, good for you, but that's obviously not the schedule that every adult out there has, right? You know, a young kid, 10-year-old kid, that's probably decent schedule. A woman in her 30s or a man in their 30s, not so much. But, you know, I'm trying to be pretty sort of open-minded and flexible. And I'm saying, look, okay, how about, you know, tomorrow night or in a couple of nights, I'll come over at about, whatever, 8:30, 9:30, whenever is your bedtime. We can watch some telly together and just chill. Oh, no, that's not okay. We don't know each other enough to be visiting each other's houses yet. We don't know each other enough to be visiting each other's houses yet. But she knows me well enough, apparently, to be setting up my schedule for me, to be telling me, you know, what time I should be going to sleep and all that sorts of stuff. Just mind-blowing, I'll be honest with you, mind-blowing. I had to really back off and say, look, I'll leave it there. You find someone who suits your schedule, and I'm sure that'll be great for you. Her response was, there's nothing wrong with me. I didn't say there was anything wrong with her. There may have been, or there may not have been. Not up to me to judge, right? But I didn't say anything like that to her, right? All I said was that I'm not interested in someone else telling me what to do. Not interested in someone else telling me when to go to sleep, right? Or when to get up in the morning. Certainly not someone who I just met, right? Not someone I was dating, not someone I was in a relationship with. We had drinks for half an hour. And yet that was enough for her to be thinking it's okay, to be setting up my schedule for me and just basically telling me how to live my life, right? It was a really frustrating experience. I can laugh about it because it is funny, but at the same time, it is actually kind of sad because I think so many people end up having frustrating experiences like that instead of genuinely finding what they're looking for. And look, sometimes I think it's actually better to find out early rather than later. So there was one time when I was chatting to this girl, or what I thought was this girl. The photos on the profile looked really pretty, pink hair, youthful. I think the profile said she was 34 years old or something like that. And then we decided to meet up, right? On the day when we were meant to meet up, all of a sudden she wasn't messaging me. So I thought, oh, maybe she changed her mind or decided to ghost me. Well, I guess, just it's not going to work out. Then later on, she messages me saying, oh, look, I had a bit of an accident. Can I call you later? I'm like, sure. Here are my digits. Give me a call later. At about 11 p.m. at night, she rings me. Now, firstly, straight away, the voice that comes out of the phone sounds like someone who is in their late 50s and has been a smoker for the last 40 years or so. Not a 34-year-old youthful-looking woman, right? Certainly not youthful sounding. But, I'm kind of, okay, let's just see what happens. Then she proceeds to tell me about this accident, right? So she spilled some hot water on her foot, which I'm like, oh, that's really sad. Hopefully you're okay. She proceeds to tell me all about that blister that popped up on her foot as a result of the spillage of the hot water on her foot, and how it popped and how all this pus came out. I don't think I needed all the medical details. She had an accident with hot water, that probably would have been enough. Didn't need to hear all about the pus. Didn't need to hear all about how painful it was, etc. While I felt sorry for her that it happened, part of me is like, I'm getting ready to vomit from all these descriptions of of all the pus that's coming out of her foot. And then she goes, oh, just give me a minute. Someone needs me. I'm like, okay, great. So she puts her phone down. A few minutes later, picks it back up and goes, oh, it's my daughter, my 27-year-old daughter. They always need something from me. Now, if this woman is 34 did she have a daughter when she was 7 years old? Or was the profile not entirely truthful? I'm leaning towards the latter, not the former. I still kind of tried to give her a benefit of the doubt, so to speak. I said, oh, look, on your profile it says you do a lot of writing, so you're a writer. Oh, look, my father told me that it's important to write things down, so I write things down sometimes. Now, mind you, writing things down, like keeping a diary or creating a shopping list, is not the same thing as being a writer. Turns out that this woman didn't have a job, so besides writing things down and looking after her 27-year-old daughter, she wasn't doing much. But she said it would have been good to catch up, would have given me a chance to get out of the house. Now, mind you, this was not in lockdown, so people were getting out of the house for all sorts of reasons. Now, she didn't necessarily need me. It was getting late because she only rang me at 11 p.m, right? So, unlike her, I have a job. I said, look, I really need to go to bed now. It's getting a bit late. I have work tomorrow. Okay, well, hopefully we can talk again soon. Sure. As soon as we hung up, I deleted her profile because that was just mind-blowing. But it really kind of opened my eyes as to the whole thing of that you really don't know what's out there. And I've had other experiences where the photos, etc., don't end up being what the person is actually like in real life. So this kittenfishing is just so present, so prevalent on these apps. They put out photos that don't represent them, but sometimes info that obviously doesn't represent it either. So, 50-something-year-old woman is writing that she is, in her early 30s, etc. And again, this is not the only case where that happened. The good thing was, with this one, we didn't actually meet up, right? So I just had to listen to that stuff over the phone instead of having to deal with that in person. In other examples, when I have had to meet up with someone who doesn't match at all what they portrayed about themselves on their app, that's really difficult to deal with. Because on one hand, what do you say without sounding rude? On the other hand, it's clearly not okay when they kind of use deception, really, because that's what it is. It's deceit. Long story short, I decided to quit these apps because I figured they're not getting me anywhere. Maybe it's a good ego boost or something, like, oh, look, I met up with this woman or that woman, she's kind of pretty, whatever. But long term, I didn't think it was doing me any favors, right? Or helping me heal, or helping me with my mental health. And I think a lot of other people I know, they're having a very similar experience, is that they seek out these apps because they're hoping it's a positive experience, but in reality, they're not actually getting any positive outcomes from it, but instead it is damaging to their mental health. Women swipe on only 4% of men that they see, while men swipe on 60% of women that they see, right? So there's already a huge gap in terms of numbers of users, but the way they approach these apps is hugely different. So women tend to select who they perceive to be the top tier men. Now that may not be the case, right? In reality, the people that they pick may be absolute douchebags, but for whatever reason, because of the photos on the profile or because of the description, women seem to think that these 4% are high quality men. While a lot of the men just essentially swipe on any woman that they see, right? Now, that has a huge consequence on the outcome of these dates, right? In a sense of the 4% of men essentially, that they get swiped on, they have a huge pick of women and they get hundreds and hundreds of matches, while the others get barely any, right? Now, what that means is that the 4% of men can set whatever terms that they want. And a lot of them essentially go, well, I can have as many women as I want, right? So they end up hooking up with hundreds of women, right? These women are not necessarily after short-term hookups, mind you. But women pick these 4%ers, right? So these 4%ers get to set whatever terms that they want. And they may not choose to have a lasting partnership or a relationship with any of those women because these men will now think that they're better than everyone else, right? So the women are unhappy because they're not getting what they want, right? They may want a partnership or a relationship or whatever. Instead, they're just being messed around with by these, top 4% men. Mind you, again, top in very, very strange terms of this strange world of online dating. Not necessarily high-value men in real life. But the majority of men are also really unhappy because they're not getting the matches. So men are unhappy and women are also unhappy. Everyone is essentially unhappy except for a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of people, right? So the outcome is, instead of people improving their lives, it becomes a lot worse. People are getting stressed out over this bullshit, right? It's bad for mental health. It's bad for how people treat relationships. Forget about the fact that there is meant to be love and romance and all that sort of stuff. That is just left somewhere on the side of the highway, right? So we have the hookup culture. We have the culture of everyone being afraid to commit. We have a culture where some people get whatever they want and the majority of people get none of what they want, right? So there's huge disbalance all across this wonderful world of online dating. It's horrible. I would encourage more and more and more people to drop out of these apps, particularly for men, but also definitely for women too. Delete them, don't go back. It's bad for mental health, it's bad for mental well-being. It really causes so much harm. Have there been situations where people have developed relationships from these apps? Of course they have. I know some people who have been able to form relationships from Tinder and all those apps, but that is a minority of people that I know. Most people that I know that have tried these apps, they have stories like mine. Kittenfishing, catfishing, scammers, people that don't care about you. All they care about is showing you their shopping list of, I want this, 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 and this. And if you don't meet one of those criteria on the shopping list, you have red flags or you have something wrong with you. There's no introspection on behalf of these users of these apps. None. There's no willingness to go forward and say, I'm actually willing to contribute, rather than just get. This is what I'm willing to give. It doesn't happen. In most cases. Happens in some, but I'm talking about the general population here. I hope that more and more people will drop out of these apps and go back to real life and try to contribute. Try to contribute to their relationships. Try to find people that they have something in common with, some sort of an attraction, and see where that goes. It may not go straight into a relationship or straight into partnership, or certainly not into family and babies and house straight away. That stuff is built over years sometimes, not over days of chatting on an app. I hope that people will start giving more rather than take. And that, in result, will also give them more as well down the road. But that is a long-term effect, and unfortunately a lot of people sacrifice long-term for the short-term. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, bye-bye.